of the Prescott Planning and Zoning Commission. Almost Halloween. Okay, I'd like to welcome our Councilman Lamerson. And we'll move right on with approval of the minutes. We got 4 meetings we need to approve the minutes on. Let's take them one at a time. Minutes of September 25th. Any discussion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I got minutes of October 2nd, which was a workshop.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? No. All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. We have a workshop of October 9th, which was, these are all public meetings.
Yep, so moved.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye. Okay.
Aye.
I have minutes of October 16th work session,
So moved.
and I have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? No? I hope you guys read all these. I did. And everybody, all those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. I would like to make a comment that the minutes of those work sessions, Suzanne, you did a great job. I mean, really, the detail was great. I mean, all I had to do was read the minutes. I didn't have to go back and check the changes that we made, because you nailed it pretty good. All right, we've got a regular action item. We have a plot plan approval, PP 14001, regarding vacant parcels on Siri Peaks trails. George, are you going to do this one?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This is a request for a preliminary plat for new subdivision, creating 6 lots out of 1. I've indicated the location on the map. You can see the zoning is SF18. There is a church camp just to the west of it that's zoned SF35. That's 35,000 square foot lots. And then the area across the street on the other side of Siri Peaks Drive is SF12 PAD, which requires a minimum of 12,000 square foot lots, but actually, because of the PAD, allows some smaller lots in there. So you'll notice in the staff report, we may have mentioned some lots as small as 6,000 square feet. That would be these, where they're very small, nearly a townhouse type of design. Property contains a few buildings and some other materials on site that will be removed as part of the development once the plat has been approved. The property is mostly flat. There's some terrain in the form of drainages through the property and some topo at the rear of the property. There are a couple of lots that, because of topography and drainage features along the front, are actually flag lots, and I'll show you the layout of that in just a moment. See if we can get it oriented more or less correctly. So the lots, there are 6 lots. The smallest is barely over 18,000, which complies with the minimum zoning requirement. The largest is about 22,000. All of those lots are larger than the ones across the street in the existing subdivision. All the utilities are available in Siri Peaks. They're sized correctly, have sufficient capacity to service these lots. 2 of the lots, due to the terrain issues, as I mentioned, have shared flag access with an access easement over it. That will also function as a public utility easement for any line extensions or utilities that need to be extended up into these 2 lots. Other than those features, all of the requirements of our typical subdivision plat process have been met. It's been thoroughly reviewed by all of the city's departments. For a change, we used to do it regularly, but we don't now. We included with this part of our review process, notes and comments. You'll notice that was attached to your staff report. At this point in time, we've received no comments for or against from any of the adjacent property owners. We have no outstanding features or issues among staff for review, and planning staff would recommend in favor of approval of this preliminary plat to forward it on to the city council for their action. If you have any questions at all, I would be happy to answer from staff side. We do have the applicants, property owners here who can answer questions as well. And with that, I will end my presentation.
These are all single-family?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. I know because there was some construction the last couple of years just south of this, right, that were
Yes, there were more of a
townhomes?
townhouse.
Patio houses?
It was, they called them patio homes, very small lots, building footprints established by the plat rather than a full lot.
That was a
established by the
PAD
plat.
project, right? This isn't.
No, this is proposed to be a standard subdivision and meeting all of the zoning requirements.
Excuse me. There are other properties along Sierra Peaks that access directly on?
All of these properties have direct access driveways.
And there's a lot of them, all the way up Sierra Peaks, right?
Yes,
There's a lot of
that's-
direct access lots.
That's correct. And we looked at that as part of the city staff review to determine that this wasn't going to create some type of a traffic impact or a hazard.
Okay. Did they see, you think there's any problem with that, those 3 flag lots coming off on a curve?
There's sufficient sight distance because of the distance from the curve and this topography to make it safe. Our traffic engineer was part of the review process and did not see a potential issue with that.
Commissioners, any questions?
The only question I had, Tom, was the only thing different from a little subdivision of 6 lots here is lots 4 and 3, 4, or 2, 3, and 4 that have got that flag coming in off of one driveway off of Sierra Peaks because of topography. And I think, you know, getting back on those lots, it makes a nice setting for somebody to have, as long as the neighbors don't go parking their cars in that right-of-way and cause, move your car, I got to get into my driveway. So I see nothing wrong with it.
It's a little funky, but
Yeah, I will point out, and I didn't mention it at the beginning, that probably should have, that this small area is not part of the subdivision. This actually belongs to the subdivision across the street. It was set aside for signage or open space or some combination of those two. That's partially why these lots have to have a flag access, is because they don't have a direct frontage on the road right there. So the flag access provides them direct frontage for water, sewer, utility connections and for vehicular access.
that piece belongs to the homeowners, right?
It does.
Association. Yeah. Any other questions, George?
Well, now this is not a PAD, right?
It is not a
Yeah,
PAD.
and-
Sir, we'll give you a chance in a minute.
Yes, and so it's a subdivision with 6 lots. What's the minimum number of lots that you can have in a subdivision? It almost seems like it's just 6 independent lots. Is there any minimum?
No, there's no minimum. State law has a trigger of creating 2 lots in a road, or any number of lots beyond 4 goes through this process, or starting at 4, goes through a subdivision plat process.
So 4 is the answer.
4 is basically the answer, but it could be 2 with a road.
Okay.
You remember all the confusion of doing 3 lots without plats?
Yeah. Well, the
Well, we
county's,
got 4.
the county's full of them. All right. Anybody in the audience like to speak to this?
My name is Alan Payne. I'm the applicant. I just would make one small.
Okay, I need an address, sir.
What?
An address?
1539 A Sierra Peaks Road, right across the street from that.
Good, thank you.
Lot 2 has its own access driveway.
I'm aware of that.
Oh, you said 2, 3,
Well,
and
it
4.
comes in front of 2. It's,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. And then 3 and 4 have the common access. That's all I had to say.
Oh, okay. Any other, I don't have any further questions. Anybody else in the audience have any comments? No? Yes, sir? Dan?
Go for it. Oh, okay.
Okay, if staff recommends approval, we can vote on this today?
Yes, sir, you can. Your recommendation, we'll take it to the city council at
Okay.
the next available council meeting.
I'll okay, do I have a motion for approval?
I'd make a motion, Tom, but for some reason or other, I'm looking at my notes and I don't see the item number. If the secretary wants to tell me which item
Okay,
it is.
It's-
Okay, I see it here.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, I'll recommend approval of PP 14-001 preliminary plat of Sierra Peaks Trails, a 6-lot subdivision encompassing 3.28 acres.
okay.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? No? All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye. Aye. Okay.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you, sir. Okay, public hearing items, discussion of the 2014 general plan draft. We have in our hands we've just gone through a series of workshops. A lot of you who are here today were there, which I was happy to see. Based on those workshops, staff has compiled I guess I consider it a final draft, right? George?
Staff should hope so. Actually, this is an opportunity for you to go through those if you want, and if additional changes or modifications of the corrections that were suggested during the workshops come up during your discussion, we would be happy to make those before forwarding them to council.
Well, I know we discussed pretty much the first 6 elements pretty thoroughly, even the changes. We went over the changes at the last public meeting. So I think what I would do is go through and look at any adjustments that were made from 7 on. Or we didn't check 7, right? We went through 6 in that in that one workshop.
I believe 7 was included in your
And
discussion.
it was briefly,
Did we touch on 7
there
in
wasn't
that?
much in that circulation.
Okay.
No, there wasn't much in there.
Okay, then let's start with 8. Yeah, okay. So we basically covered everything through 7 pretty well in the first couple of workshops, and we got a lot of public comments to help with that. So let's start with, just go through the adjustments, which are, if you have a copy of the new draft, they're in red. And I'd like to just run through them, starting with element number 8, open space. Okay, George, did you want to?
We made some minor language adjustments through that process.
Okay.
Some of the changes were simple grammatical. Others were based on comments that we received from the Planning Commission during that workshop. I don't know that a line-by-line review is probably the best use of your time. I would
Okay.
suggest that rather, if you have questions about specific sections, that we jump right to those sections.
In element 8, no, this is about the only adjustments that were made, right? Just some minor stuff?
Most
Right.
of it was pretty much minor tweaking to grammar and sentence structure. I don't believe we really added very much in the way of substantive information.
Okay. I think what I'm going to do is run through these red mark lines and then open it up to the public to see if they have any comments on these, on elements 8 through 12. Let's look at element 9, environmental issues. Just minor adjustments, a couple few words, right?
Again, a very similar circumstance.
Okay.
The modifications were based on comments we received during the public hearing, or the public workshop meetings. Some of those comments were pretty simple as
Okay.
to, let's just change a few words here or there in order to make it clearer.
Okay, I know we discussed dark sky pretty thoroughly.
Yeah, we were going to remove the reference to any,
Yeah, we were going
the
to,
3,000 degrees of Kelvin as being
Oh,
more
okay, I apologize.
technical.
I did not catch that one.
well, we were going to remove any of the specifics like references to degrees Kelvin and the lumens of fixture of landscape fixtures, things like that. We were going to leave that up to the staff
Okay.
to develop. those specifics, but I still see them in here. Under 9.5. And I thought we were pretty specific about doing that, and we had a consensus that we didn't think this was the place for specifics.
What was the recommendation?
Yeah, I understand. Much of what this says is general information. Something as specific as the 3,000 Kelvin certainly doesn't belong in the general plan.
Well, in other words, yeah, under 9.5, there was a lot of specific things, and then under 9.52, yeah, we were going to make some adjustments there, or at least kind of get rid of those specific things and deal with them in the Uniform Development Code.
We will make those notations and changes.
Okay. Any commissioners, any
I was
comments?
just going to say, so that would basically just be the last line of the second paragraph, right, where it gets specific.
Well, the second paragraph under 9.5 has a lot of
So,
things.
I'm sorry, on the second page.
And then the last paragraph of 9.52,
Yes.
right.
So it's two paragraphs that are affected.
Mr. Chairman, one way to do this, rather than send it back for us to make that modification, is for you to simply move to remove it.
Yeah.
If you want to be specific about those two paragraphs that you just mentioned and have us delete them, your option to make a motion on the plan at the end of this meeting, if you choose to do so, is still open at that point. If you give it back to us to make corrections, then we will be bringing it back to you for a final vote another time.
Okay.
So we can make a motion to remove any numerical reference to degrees of Kelvin or lumens in the
I would
plan.
recommend you be specific about a section or a paragraph. In this case, that paragraph probably can be removed without changing any of the intent of the remainder of the section on dark sky.
Yeah, I mean,
The
that's,
same thing can be said for strategy 1.2. You could simply remove the entire strategy, and by motion, doing that now during your discussion and review process.
Yeah, here and here.
As long as you do it before you close the public hearing later.
okay.
Yeah, I would recommend that rather than waiting until after the meeting and we go through all the other elements, we want to remove the second paragraph in 9.5. We want to remove 9.52. We do it as we come, get it done, and then we don't have to worry about it at all.
Lynn, is it you want to remove the entire paragraph or just the line beginning?
No, the
or
entire
temperature
paragraph.
3000?
On 9.5, dark sky, remove the whole second paragraph. Light, it starts with light color and ends with bluff light. That's, to
Yeah,
me,
I think
is
so.
something I think, Tom, you and I and whoever else is on the Land Development Code realize that that's a code item to be written in the codes. It
And
shouldn't
it
be.
wouldn't affect, it's not going to affect the intent of the general plan regarding dark sky.
No, I believe we can
Okay.
remove those
Which is-
types of
okay.
specifics.
All right? How do you want us to do that? Just,
So your proposal is to delete
Yes.
the second paragraph of 9.5?
and the last paragraph of 9.52.
Right.
Where it
beginning-
talks about 300 lumens and 10 feet above ground.
And then strategy 1.2.
Yes, in strategy 1.2.
I think we have that very clearly, thank you.
Okay? I don't think we,
That's the motion, do you have a second?
do we need to make a motion on that?
Second.
Yeah, as you're
All right.
editing
Any
along the
further
way,
comment?
yeah.
So
Any-
Lynn makes the motion and King seconds.
Okay. Anybody in the audience have any comments on that particular section?
I agree with you.
Okay.
Motion was to remove.
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
I did, and it's to
You did,
remove the
okay.
second paragraph of 9.5,
Okay.
the last paragraph.
All right. Nobody in the audience? Anybody?
And
any
Lynn?
further? Just
And also to remove strategy 1.2?
And to
Strategy
remove
1.2.
strategy
okay. You
1.2.
got that?
Got it.
Any
Thanks,
further
guys.
comments? No? All those in favor, raise your right hand.
Aye.
Okay, good. All right, I'm going on number 10, element 10, water resources element. Again, very minor stuff, adjustments, mostly a word here and a word there.
That's correct. There was very few changes made by the commission at their workshop.
Okay. Commissioners, any comments on that element? You happy with that? Okay.
Well, I guess I just questioned in terms of their statement, it says there's no plan to achieve safe yield within the AMA. I guess it depends on who you talk to. We say they have that as a goal. I guess that's not quite the same as a plan. Maybe there could be,
The state has resource plans that they adopt periodically that are associated with active management areas, including the Prescott Active Management Area. So there is a state-generated plan. I think what we don't have is some internally coordinated plan between the municipalities that lie within that AMA.
So the,
and the groundwater, I mean, and the wells, and, you know, it's not just the municipalities.
That is part of the problem. The wells are not regulated by the municipalities, and that is something that's sort of out of Prescott's hands. One of the issues that was discussed by the committee, and we do have committee members here who can talk about that during the process, related to the fact that our authority and ability to affect a change in the AMA is very limited by our legal jurisdiction.
Correct.
We occupy a very small portion of the overall AMA. There are a number of other entities, state, county, and other municipalities that all have a shared responsibility in achieving that safe yield requirement.
George, are we satisfied that that's worded, that's in here?
Well, I'm kind of looking at Jim over here to say, you know, it's not the fact that we're lazy and don't want to do a plan. It's like it's out of our complete ability to develop a plan.
The city's addressing what the city takes out and what the city puts back in. What we can't address is what the rest of the planet does. All we can do is work with the rest of the planet to try and encourage them, which we are doing,
Okay,
to address what they do.
great. Thanks, Jim. So are we still satisfied with what's in the general plan here regarding that issue?
Work and cooperate with the other agencies and the other communities.
And it says that?
We do encourage that in the
Basically, it
strategies and
encourages
goals.
it.
yes.
Okay. Do we need to emphasize any of that, or are we happy with it?
I believe it was thoroughly
Okay.
vetted by both staff and the committee.
Commissioners, you, okay?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to move on to element 11, economic development. And we have a few things in here in this element to cover. We had an adjustment under 11.2.2 housing.
There was some discussion about which housing studies were appropriate. There was also discussion about whether or not to specifically mention particular areas as far as workforce housing locations. So some of the changes you see were additions and others were just rewording of existing language. So paragraph 11.2.2, we reworded the language to have a little bit better coverage of the whole housing issue.
To update
Right.
some housing studies? Yeah, I know there was a question about that, so we got that in there.
And 11.2.3, we wanted to make sure we addressed some of the other corridors. Commissioner Mabarack brought up the fact that there was a lot of focus on Highway 69, which was a real carryover from the 2003 plan, where that was the major focus for economic development and commercial development.
Yeah,
So
he
that's
wanted to include some other commercial corridors. Are you satisfied with that, Ken?
Yeah.
11.2.3?
Yeah, if we're going to mention any corridor specifically, I think you need to mention most of the corridors specifically.
Yeah, I think part,
You know, you have Iron Springs and Gale Gardner areas that aren't in there. I appreciate Willow Creek Road because it's a big tax base, but I think we're being short-sighted by not talking about some of the other places. If we're going to talk about any.
is that a proposal to amend this to add the additional? I would suggest again, specific. If you want to add Iron Springs Road or add Gale Gardner, let's specifically say so, and we'll include those in a motion.
Why don't
and that'll
we
be part
just-
of your approval.
Why don't we just say to include all major
Criteria.
commercial corridors, period?
Commercial corridors.
But again, if we do that, we're going to take Willow Creek Road out of it as well as Highway 69 out of it. It'll become very generic at
That's what
that
the,
point. So I guess
that's
the
what the
question
committee
is,
did originally.
is it more effective to have it generic and just say all major commercial corridors, or is it better to have a list of examples? And if so, how long a list?
It's fine the way it is.
Well, didn't we discuss using the term such as our forests.
Well, that would work too.
Wasn't that what- wasn't that
would work
discussed at
too.
the,
Yeah,
meeting?
yeah. Why don't we just,
So it doesn't
You
have
could
to
do
be
that.
so
all-inclusive.
it's, so it is generic, but you can still mention a couple of specifics. That would work,
Yeah.
right? Any comments? No?
Do you want a specific language change?
I'd like to see Iron Springs Road in this as it's a major artery. You've got a major shopping center up there. You got shopping centers being expanded and redeveloped up there.
Okay.
I think we're short-sighted, and we're carrying over 12-year-old language by just saying Highway 69. And you only have a few major arteries in the town. You got 3 major north-south arteries, and you got Iron Springs that goes northwest, and then you got Whipple and Gurley and Sheldon. And beyond that, you don't have, and 69, of course. So I would say let's add to that paragraph, Iron Springs Road. I so move, make the motion.
Second. Move this along.
Maybe adjust something that says to include or such as. I mean, I like that idea too.
Keep in mind, this section is dealing with
workforce.
so it's more of the housing,
Yeah,
not the
it's more of a
commercial corridor.
workforce
We
thing.
do talk about the other commercial corridors a little bit further in.
Okay.
So in this particular case, we do know of a number of housing developments that are occurring or proposed along these roadways, and that was more of the focus. The actual economic development or commercial development, I think, is addressed in the next section.
Okay. Let's see.
wanna
Let's
look
go
at the
ahead.
It is, but the first sentence in this paragraph says, development has moved commercial centers and employment to major arteries such as Highway 69. So that's what I was referring to. It just doesn't matter, I gotta tell you. This is getting arcane.
If you'd like us to add the additional such as language, we can just put a comma after Highway 69 and add the additional roads, but I guess the question is, which additional roads? Do we just add a few as examples, such as Iron Springs? Or do you want to make it generic and just say commercial corridors?
Mr. Chairman.
You know, I'm happy with the such as.
I was going to state that the whole problem with this particular paragraph begins with the such as.
Right.
Development has moved to commercial areas and employment in major arterials and
Bingo.
commercial corridors have been designated in the CCO overlay. The such as confuses the whole issue. I think you said it all. Major arteries in the commercial overlay districts that are in
And
the
not mention
zoning
anything
code.
specific.
I was
Is that what
fine
you're
with
suggesting?
mentioning nothing.
So
or mentioning them all.
remove the words such as Highway 69?
Right.
Is that a motion?
Well, then what does that do to the part you added later?
It's okay.
don't add it.
No, the section later is fine.
Well, I think Tom is talking about the last paragraph in red.
The red change.
If we took the such as Highway 69 out and deleted the
That's fine.
additional new language in red, we'd have 11.2 acceptable to me. And that's basically what it was.
That's what it was to be from the committee.
So
Okay, I'm up for that.
That's good.
Len, is that a motion?
I'll make it a motion.
Second.
I'll second, Chair.
All those, any comments from the public on that particular issue?
You taking out the red?
We are.
Yes.
Okay.
You agree there?
It'll work.
Attaboy.
Okay. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, good. That one's done.
Mr. Menser,
Yes.
Mr. Mambarak actually made a motion and Mr. Sheets seconded that motion, so he needs to withdraw it or something
I
needs to
withdraw my
happen with
motion.
it.
Okay. All right, 11.3.1, George. This is also, has to do with telecommuting. Is that what we added in there regarding telecommuting in this section?
It is. At the workshop meeting, Elizabeth Ruffner, a member of the General Plan Committee, offered to provide some information to staff, and staff compiled that information down to this paragraph to talk about the technology available and the opportunities that telecommuting may provide for additional types of businesses in town where our access, roadways, et cetera, are not adversely impacted by that business.
And we saw that at the last workshop. We saw what Elizabeth had submitted. Is that okay with you, Elizabeth? That portion been? We added that in the last workshop. Thank you for submitting that. We're good with that? Sure.
Daniel Mattson, 148 East Merritt. Where the paragraph begins, innovations in information and marketing. Would it not be more appropriate to say innovations in information technology and marketing? That's all.
Technology after information in the first line?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Is it because it's the innovations in information technology that
Sounds
makes
reasonable. It's a very good addition as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. I have no problem with that. That sounds like a pretty good addition.
So we're adding technology
Yeah,
after.
it's not information, it's information technology.
Okay. Anything else? Everybody happy with the rest of that?
Make a motion so it's official.
Okay. Entertain a motion to change, to add the word technology, information technology.
Yeah, so moved.
Okay. I have a second.
I'll second.
Need further discussion? Raise your right hand, say aye. Okay. Onward. All right. 11.3.2, strategy 2.4. George? Same issue?
Again, trying to not be overly specific, but addressing the types of partnerships that we would be able to encourage through the city, working with organizations like Cable One or some of the other providers, cell service providers.
Okay.
We're trying to make it as generic as possible in the language so that we didn't restrict ourselves in operations.
Okay.
So I think actively marketing was added as an incentive type of terminology to the rest of those encouraging the development of commerce and industry. We want to be able to say that technologically we're not going to be a speed bump or roadblock to companies coming in here. We want to encourage them to bring in a business that may be a different model than we have traditionally seen.
I'm good with that. Everybody happy? Elizabeth? You like that little addition?
It's kind of implying that we're actively marketing Prescott as a market. I mean, can you say we're
It's
even
actually
doing?
a recommendation to actively market us.
It's a
Right,
strategy.
as that, but are we doing that in any sense, really? I mean, are we actively marketing Prescott at all? I would say kind of not very much.
We are.
We have an economic development department, so yes,
Yeah.
we have a tourism
Yeah.
department.
True.
But we do have the
G-Prep.
G-Prep.
We're trying to do a lot of things to make
Okay.
it.
I'm good with it. Everybody's good with it. Some other minor changes, like the staff budget made. Let's see. That's about it on 11. Any other comments? Yes, sir?
11, let's see, goal 4, strategy 6. Do we really need the word vagrancy in there? It's kind of an ugly word, and I think you kind of pointed, we're kind of saying it already with the overnight camping, panhandling. Vagrancy is kind of an insulting term, if you will. It's not very politically correct to those who are struggling and poor. And I really don't understand why that word needs to be there when you already have overnight camping and panhandling. It just breaks.
Yeah.
Well, we did
I think we
discuss
had-
whether we should have something in here regarding the homeless.
And we,
Call it homeless, that's more acceptable in the community. As far as among homeless people.
Because I certainly would have liked to have something in there.
Vagrant. Vagrants is kind of an insulting term. It'd be like,
well,
I'm not going to give you any other specific examples because they're,
Okay, so
they're
you
politically.
think homelessness would be a better?
Homelessness would be more, I
know
think
what?
would look better, but I don't
I
even
think-
see
I
that
think-
it's needed because we have overnight camping and panhandling pretty much
so
says it.
again, the strategy is talking about the negative issues and that we want to address those negative issues.
Right.
Homelessness, not necessarily by itself, is a negative issue.
It's a negative issue. It's just
it's only if
it
you're
is what
doing
it is.
something that does adversely impact the community. The panhandling and the overnight camping and on public
I would
properties
ask you why that
might.
whole strategy's in there. And your goal is to enhance the character and ambience of the downtown. It's not about police operations. I just wonder why that whole paragraph's there.
I think it has to do with safety.
But it's the categories enhance the character and ambiance of downtown. And so we're pointing out that we have vagrants and panhandle. I agree with what was just said, but I don't understand the whole paragraph.
I personally don't have any problem with it. Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, Elizabeth Ruffner.
Yes, Elizabeth.
Green Park. I'm not sure that this is even necessary in this general plan. It seems to be a safety and policing system rather than planning and addressing vulnerable populations, which I would use instead of any of the other words here, where like vagrancy. Vulnerable populations has gotten to be now the phrase we use to describe everyone we're talking about in those categories of living in the forest with their children, going to public school, etc. The vagrancy is not a good word, it's pejorative. Vulnerable populations, if you want to leave that kind of specificity in there, describes whom we're just talking about.
Okay.
I'm not sure it's even necessary, though it seems to me to be a policing condition of the Department of Public Safety, or of our police system, rather than planning for enhancing the character of downtown.
Okay.
It's questionable to me.
Personally, I'd just get rid of it.
Well, now, you mean the vagrancy?
No, 4.6.
The whole paragraph.
Well, the paragraph was put in by the committee.
Well,
The only word we changed was, the only thing the staff included was vagrancy. So does the committee, do they want to remove this paragraph, or just?
There is no committee, I thought.
Actually, there was never a vote to disband the committee, so technically it still
No,
exists.
but the committee
But
wrote,
I don't
wrote
see-
this, so that's what I'm saying.
I would agree, when the enhance the character and ambience of downtown, I don't really see a need for strategy 4.6 at all. You could take that whole thing out, and I don't think it would hurt the plan one bit.
I agree with you,
I'm done with
Daniel.
that.
I move we remove strategy 4.6.
Second, I'll second
Further
that from the
discussion?
committee.
Further discussion, anyone? No? All those in favor, aye? Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Scratch strategy 4.6.
Got it.
Now, was there anything else in this section, Ken, that you wanted to go back to?
No, I'm fine. They made some changes.
Okay.
I think it's fine.
Okay. I'm good with 11. We're going on to 12.
There were very few changes proposed for 12.
Okay.
There are, again, a few corrections to terminology. We found one capitalization error in here.
Okay.
Most of the changes, most of the discussion was primarily just making sure that the planning commissioners thoroughly understood what the intent of Article 12 or Element 12 was all about.
Were we going to put something about fish and game in 12? Or is that the inappropriate place?
There were a few changes that were made to the environmental element and open space element that you talked about during the workshops that I think are back in those
Back in the
elements.
other
And,
elements?
most of the changes that were presented to us by Fish and Game were efforts to include the term fish and game in our general plan.
Game and fish.
Yeah, well, sorry, backwards. Maybe we need to put it in more often. I had it out of order. Their intent seemed to be to simply have the name of their organization in more often than it is.
Okay.
So in many cases, we did not go back through and simply add it for that purpose.
All right. I think we as a commission then are through the 12 elements, right? Any commissioners, any further comments on anything? No? All right. Anybody in the audience have anything at all they
Mr.
want to add
Mr. Chairman,
before we pass on this thing?
Just for a technicality, I would suggest you open the public hearing and then ask for the audience comments, and that way you'll be able to close the public hearing
well,
that was advertised
This
for
hearing
today.
is still open from a previous
It's
meeting,
been
right?
such a long time,
So
yeah.
I'm open already, but I will
Okay.
open the public hearing. But it's already open, so.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone in the audience, anything further to say? I think we're close.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
not commenting, but thanking you for the hard work.
Well, thank you for the
Glad
hard
you
work.
stayed with it.
Thanks to the committee for all their hard work. They sure put in a lot more hours than we did.
Oh, yeah.
And I just wanted to say, I still have seen a few minor corrections that be, like there's a space where it shouldn't be, and there's a missing space here and there, but that's nothing that should keep it from moving on to the next level.
No, I don't think so.
I'm not real thrilled with the definition of safe yield, but again, I wouldn't think that should hold it up. So,
Okay.
hallelujah, I think we're ready to go forward.
Thank you. Lindsay?
I also want to thank you all for all the hard work you've put in and 3 workshops to go over everything, and I especially appreciate your willingness to consider my voluminous comments that I made on the draft from a few months ago. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do it. I do have a couple of questions going forward. I noticed that there is not a section on general plan amendments. And I'm wondering, has the state law changed? Because it used to be very specific on what constituted a major plan amendment versus a minor
And a
plan
minor
amendment.
plan amendment, right. Is there anything in here, George, covering that issue?
Not in the plan itself.
I mean, it's state
The state law
statute,
has
right?
a specific requirement, and the city adopted a definition and, by ordinance, a definition and a process. So that's a separate document.
But is
on
that
how to
included
amend
by
the general
reference?
plan. It is
Shouldn't it
not.
be?
I don't know.
Mr. Counselor? Shouldn't we have a reference back to the state statutes that apply?
From staff's perspective, we don't believe it's necessary. Again, the council adopted a process. The language changes that have been made this time around do not change that process, nor any of the definition.
But
I
that
don't think we
process
need to
does
amend it.
affect the general plan.
That process affects the general plan, but it is set already, established by both state law and city ordinance.
Okay?
Now, what we did, and what may have caused some confusion before, is when council adopted the amendment ordinance, we included it in the back of the plan so that it was clear to anyone picking up the plan. So the hard copy of the plan had it, and we would suggest doing the same thing this time, but it's not actually incorporated into the plan.
Does that work?
It
With you,
works.
as long as that they do have a copy of that?
Yeah, if it's included in the general plan.
Right.
My assumption is that someone who is a developer who is wondering whether or not his or her development plan constitutes a major or minor plan amendment would logically look to
In
the general plan to
right.
figure out whether,
Yeah.
and there's a big difference between the two, and the difference is that if it's a major plan amendment that you're proposing with your development, you can only do that once a year.
That's right.
A minor plan amendment can come forward at alternative times, but if it's a major one, that's once a year, and you've got to figure out your timing.
I think there should be reference to it in the general plan.
Where would you suggest we reference that?
I don't know.
Again, what we did with the 2003 plan was to simply attach that ordinance to the back of the plan. So anyone who picked up the general plan or looked at it online could see that requirement. And we would do the same thing now. Again,
Okay.
referencing it in the plan seems a little overkill.
I'm not sure if legally you need to do it. I think there's a distinction between the creation and adoption of a new general plan versus doing a major or minor amendment to an existing general plan. So Arizona Revised Statute 9-461.06 kind of talks about the process of adoption and amendment of a general plan.
Right.
It's ultimately up to you as to whether or not you want it referenced in your general plan or not. So
Okay.
I think it's a discretionary call for you guys.
In the 2003 general plan, it was actually included as a section, and then after the ordinance was passed, which codified the recommendation that the general plan committee had made at that time, then the actual ordinance was also, number 13, chapter 13.
Oh, okay.
Whatever way you do it, I think that the two documents ought to go together so that a developer can clearly see whether his or her plan coming forward would trigger a major plan or a minor plan amendment, because I don't know where else they would look.
In the codes.
Well,
So, again, we attached and included it in the general plan for reference of
and you
anyone who
will,
might have had
and
an
you will
issue.
on this one?
But it was not adopted as part of the general plan.
Right.
You do have a potential issue in that if you include it in the plan, then any amendment to that ordinance would also require a general
affect
plan
it.
amendment.
Okay.
I think the timing originally was that the general plan was done and it made reference to major and minor.
Well, it was the first general plan
Because
that
it was part of the overall, had to do it because of the new legislation with
Right,
the Grow Smart.
right. One of
After the general plan was written, then along came code and the land development code and so forth, and we wrote a provision, and it became an ordinance of what was a minor plan amendment and what was a major plan amendment. I think that's why it had to be attached as an attachment. Now it's part of the code. If I'm a developer and I go in and I sit down with one of the planners and say, here's what I want to do, they're going to inform me at that time whether I've got a major or minor plan amendment. And whether or not it's going to be once a year with a major decision, or whether it could be done administratively with a minor plan adjustment and come before the P&Z. So that's my statement on it. I don't think it's
So again, from
necessary.
staff perspective, we can handle it either way. If you want to make it an element of the plan, then we can simply add it and number it and make it element 14 or whatever the correct number is this time. Or, again, the city has on its books an ordinance adopted by city council that controls this process that's there, and we can attach that ordinance or the ordinance language like we did in the 2003 plan to that. And just a minor clarification.
That works with me.
Council adopted this process before the adoption of the general plan. It was
Okay.
during the writing
So
of the
it's-
plan they adopted this.
Okay.
Well, I have a comment on this, and I believe that about 2 years ago, we went through this at the council and at planning and zoning in terms of the airport north, the changes up there, and that we did go in, and it was a requirement to change the general plan in order to then approve the new annexation and subdivision up there for the airport north. Is that correct, Jim? That we did that, and so we had an ordinance, we had a process, and we followed that. There's other examples where you don't have to go in and actually formally amend the general plan in order to do something that's a minor change.
Most general plan amendments are actually general plan land use map amendments and not the plan itself.
Right.
Most of what we've dealt with since the adoption and ratification of the 2003 plan has been has been only map amendments, not text amendments.
You know, and
If somebody came in to fill out an application, they would know.
They would know.
The process is.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct. We have the process, and again, we do have a formal application process for general plan amendment.
I see no need in taking the general plan and having a provision in it or an addition where you're saying all state and local laws have to be adhered to. I think that's understood when you do a plan, that if there's state laws that supersede
Okay.
something that you've done, they're gonna rule the rules.
I think we're good with it. I think a good point, Lindsay, but I think it looks like it's covered.
Okay. My other question then is about the process. The whole general plan, public comment and hearing process has been sort of lengthy.
Yes.
So I'm wondering about from here on out, assuming that you all approve it to pass it on to City Council, isn't there going to be yet again another round of public hearings?
At the city council. And how many?
It is our understanding
hearings.
that's council's desire to have some workshop meetings or some time set aside specifically for this, but I am not in a position to speak to council's
Okay.
specific process.
They
The
may feel
legal
it's-
requirement is that your recommended version go to the city council and that they adopt a version and then adopt ballot language that would place that version
Are there
on a ballot.
specific number of public hearings with the city council? No?
We've covered the public hearing requirements through planning commission.
We did
as
that
is
here.
Set out by the
Okay.
state statute.
So it could be just one public meeting with the city council.
It's very unlikely. They've been very explicit in that they want to go through this in detail to make sure that they're comfortable with it as well. I would
Okay.
anticipate a number of public meetings.
And that's up to them.
We do know of at least one on December 2nd where there will be a handoff, official handoff from the chairs of the committee to the city council of the process. They would be able to discuss it at that time perhaps, and maybe
Okay.
council at that time would talk about what their intent is for future public meetings
Okay.
on the topic.
Anything else?
That's
No?
it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your
Lindsay.
input. We appreciated it. Okay, I think,
Mr.
yes,
Chair,
sir.
as your liaison from the council, thank you all very much for your hard work, and I thank the committee for the longevity of time they were willing to donate. Time is money if you're in business, that they were willing to donate to the city in helping get this through the process. The council is anxiously awaiting the opportunity to see what you have forwarded to us by committee and by your vetting out all the things. And you've done a very good job. And if I'm not mistaken, and I could be, but I don't think I am, we would desire probably to have this on a special election sometime in the early spring. So, and now I could be wrong on that. I'm not speaking on behalf of the other six, but sometime in the spring is what we would be looking to do. And then again, it may be held over because of the cost of elections until September when we do the primary. So just sharing it with you.
Okay.
There are very specific state law timing issues to get items on a ballot, and I think one of the things that council will have to determine is how quickly to move along in order to attain those specific timeframes.
Well, I understand why a special election would be less desirable because of the cost, I would think. But, you know,
At the
that's
same
up to...
time, a single item election may
Might
be
be
better for the
fairly
plan
simple.
itself.
Yeah.
So there are things that council will have to consider for that.
Okay, everybody. No more comment. I'm going to close the public hearing.
Thank you.
All right, folks, I'll entertain a motion to approve the latest general plan draft and forward it to the city council. I have a
There he
motion.
is, the chairman. Let him bring it up.
Do I have a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Okay. All right, any further discussion?
So just for
Okay.
clarification, that included all of the changes that you
Yes.
voted on during this process?
It did. Okay? Do we need to state that? Take a vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
We're done with it.
Thank you. We'll point out for the record, Daniel was the one applauding.
Daniel can hand carry it to the city council. Okay, anything else, George? City updates, current events?
My intent was to update you on the chair's presentation to the city council on the 2nd of December, but I did that during the discussion, so I'm finished, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we're done.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.